Hello, Ariel.
Hello.
Morning. I was waiting for folks to show up. I'm gonna start sharing my screen here too. Okay. And I'm trying to see their pull requests in here. Oh, there was an email from Matej. It made some commits, but no pull request. So I'm gonna take a look at what that is all about. Matej, there we go. I see. Okay. Hello, everyone. Oh, Zvonko, you haven't been here. Peter, hello. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
All right. So we're off to the races. I'm going to put the meeting minutes in chat. Make sure to add yourselves. All right. So three things I'm hoping to discuss today. So we're going to continue working on the informational draft. The document needs renaming. We'll need to agree on the name, and then someone is just going to make that change, complete the pull request. We're not going to do it in real time. And then there is a pull request from me that basically removed a bunch of unnecessary content, or what I felt was unnecessary content anyway. Then separately, I want to quickly cover the geofencing informational draft that went around in the status. In the agenda email I sent out last night, there is a hyperlink to it. I can probably copy it over here. And Zvonko shared with me a model signing proposal from OpenSSF. I finally got around to looking at it over the last couple of days, and we're not going to deal with it while working on the informational draft, but I just wanted to raise awareness of it because we're going to have a discussion around the role of continuous computing with machine learnings, especially as as I already mentioned, models are a very different software paradigm that continuous computing wasn't really thinking about when it was designed. So we'll need to figure out how to make the two work together. All right. So with that, any other issues that we should be putting on today's agenda from anyone before we dive in?
It's probably not an agenda item, but just so you know, I'm in process of doing a revamp of the provenance definitions. I hoped to have something ready by this meeting, but unfortunately, life happened. So I'm gonna do a PR shortly, I think in a day or two. I will probably have to decide offline whether we accept those definitions and then see whether we do any changes by the IETF, or maybe we just, bypass this kind of checkpoint and do it later on. I don't want to rock the ship, bottom line. But
Okay,
just expect something in a day or two as a pull request.
sounds good. I'll keep an eye out for it. Okay, Benedict, you're new here. Would you like to introduce yourself? We can't hear you. Oh, hi. Now we can hear you.
That works. Great. Hi, I'm new here. Benedict, based out of Toronto. I work with Equity Lab. I'm the CTO there. We've been looking into a lot of related topics, and I'm mostly playing catch up just to see what this group is doing.
I see. Okay. Well, you can look over the meeting minutes for the last few meetings that we've had. We'll be discussing the informational draft today. There is stuff that you can look at that is probably very salient, like the charter of the SIG, which is linked from, I believe, the meeting minutes. That would be a good thing for you to review. And we have, and we'll be coming back to editing the reference architecture document that is in GitHub. Again, all of those documents are linked. If you have trouble finding anything or have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email.
Great, thank you so much.
All right. So let's see. Let's dive in and take a look at this pull request that I opened, and I think it's pretty much ready to go, but I wanted to come on. Come up. All right, so we're gonna do the same thing as we've done before. Just I'm going to scroll through. If you see anything that you object to for this pull request, then speak up now. We'll make the changes. But these are small nits. Just literally typo fixes and sometimes splitting lines for the renderer.
So for 123, I wonder, it's a need in a need, I guess, but the way you phrase it is as if, confidential computing is a value of its own. Maybe you should kind of reword it to say without a strong hardware-based guarantees, which happen to be provided by confidential computing, you get XYZ. Like this is solutioning, not problem making or problem stating, I guess, if you say without confidential computing.
Well, how would you rephrase it?
Without hardware-based guarantees or something,
So I'm
along
a
those
little
lines.
reticent when talking to Whimsy specifically to stress hardware-based, because I always have in the back of my mind things like Nitro. Or really Microsoft's VSM, which is entirely software-based, because it is an extra, barrier, but potentially significant barrier, right? So that's why, I would not stress hardware. Simply we need some maybe replace without confidential computing with without data and use protection.
Yeah, I think that's a middle
Yeah,
ground. I
that's
mean,
what I was going to say. Yes, without data in use protection or without the protection of code while it's been executed or something like that.
Yeah, well, the data and use protection is probably the best. Let me quickly make that change then. Down to 123.
But is it just the data or as well as the code in use when code is
Well,
actually
data and
used?
use protection is kind of a term of art. There is, we wouldn't, like, I've actually haven't heard of. I know I know what you're getting at. Okay. So that's just adding a colon to make it consistent. Another few small tweaks for grammar. already talking about it. Again, more typos, more grammar. Provenance is still, I'm just capitalizing the terms here, really not doing anything else. So yeah. Okay, so there was a bunch of stuff I removed because I felt it was duplicative. So for cross-domain trust enhancement, I'm basically saying we need an issue to fill the section, or else we'll just remove it. I don't see what we're doing for cross-domain trust enhancement. We haven't even outlined any problems with cross-domain trust. So I don't know. I'm actually inclined to just remove this. What's the feeling in the room?
I would keep this in.
Well,
for
what would you
anyone
say?
coming from the
What would
whimsy
you say
space.
about it?
Well, I think it's just good context for someone who comes from the whimsy background if they're looking at this documentation.
But what exactly would you say that? What? Okay, so if you want to say in the extensions document to whimsy that we need to enhance cross-domain trust, what would you say? First, you need to say what's lacking, right? We already mentioned what's lacking in the first sections of the document on the gap analysis, and then you would have to propose something to enhance the cross-domain trust. So what would that be?
Beyond whimsy. I don't think we're offering anything that's beyond. Okay,
Well,
that's a fair
right.
point.
In which case, right? So, and again, we can always put something back if we needed to.
Sounds good.
Okay. So I would go scroll down to 218 and just kill these lines. Okay. So with that, this is what I think we should do. I think, did I just commit it? Okay. So this is what I removed. I removed the TWI use cases and core requirements because we pretty much already said everything that needed to be said. We still need security considerations. That's boilerplate, not to worry about it. And so this is, and now I'm thinking, this is a more like a statement of work, right? So we are explaining what needs to be enhanced. We're really not offering a whole lot in the solution space, although perhaps we could. And we still have a little bit of time, a couple of weeks before the final cutoff. And Peter, I did see your email on that, reminding everyone that we need to put it on the data tracker. So all of that is going to be done. Yes, Peter, if you're still, you're not showing up on my list here of attendees. Are you still around? I want to have a quick question for you.
I'm here, Mark.
Oh, okay. So is there the sooner you get in, the better your chances to present, or is it really, you're waiting until July 7th and then putting a list together of people who will be presenting and discussing things?
Yeah, we typically wait until we know all the topics that people want to discuss. We do try and give everybody an opportunity to present. So also the agenda, although we will publish it early, it's not unheard of that agendas change, right? So I think the deadline is really around publication and when you need to have your drafts up on data tracker. So I would encourage you to try and make that deadline, but it doesn't really change how we think about the actual agenda.
Well, we'll definitely meet the data tracker deadline. I was more like, you get it in and then maybe you're too late anyway. That's what I was worried about. So for reference, let me show you this other draft that is probably going to be discussed at the Whimsy working group. This is verifiable geofencing, proof of possession, protocol-aware residency enforcement. Okay, so without getting into too many details, I do have a few things to say about this. But it explains the fact that data residency is a requirement, and we effectively need to bind the credential to the platform and issue some information and some claims into the workload. And it talks about, for instance, TPM-based attestation and a few other technologies. So the satellite-based location and mobile device management, IP signatures, a bunch of other new technologies. And then it goes into a number of scenarios, and then it goes into problem statements. Then there is an approach summary, and then actual modifications to the SPIF-Aspire architecture that are being proposed. So there is a lot here in terms of the solution as well, right? So here is effectively a swim lane diagram in words, not in pictures. Right, so we're not going to that level of depth in our draft. I think we're being very conservative, not to, I don't know, the way I see it, not to get whimsy, resistant to our ideas by offering too much. I think mostly offering that, there is the space and let's work together on figuring out the solution. I think that's our initial approach. So, I guess my first question to the group is, do you feel that we should take some of the swim lane diagrams from our reference architecture and perhaps show them here? And again, remember, those have to do more with integration with remote attestation, right? So arguably, it might even be better to show that to the RATS working group, not to Whimsy. I don't know, but I'm talking too much, so I wanted to hear what you guys are thinking. Anyone? So, okay, let me see if did I pose the question correctly? Like, should we limit ourselves in the Whimsy draft to just a gap analysis and the problem statement, or should we put anything in there to offer some form of a direction for a solution?
So a question I have is, how many meetings in did they present this document to Whimsy? Because when I was doing IETF work, I did a total of 8 or 9 drafts over the course of 2 or 3 years. So, and the very first one had like no. I went in with the solution, and they're like, we don't want that. We want to go through the whole process of doing, the gap analysis and what the requirements are and what the impact assessment is and all these various things. But
Yeah.
that was a different working group than this, obviously. Every group does things their own way. So if this is the result of them having gone and presented at 3 or 4 meetings already, then this seems like the right maturity of document.
Right. I don't know how many. I have not seen this one before at all. And in fact, I have issues of the kind you're just describing with this. I'm like, let me tell you real quick what the issues I have with this particular document, but we should not be spending too much time on it. This skips architecture and goes into design. What I mean by that is, and I actually filed an issue on them in their GitHub specifically on that. It is perfectly great to solve and very necessary to solve the data residency problem. But it's a special instance of another problem. And another problem is that I would like to introduce into the workload identity certain claims about the platform on which the workload is running. And I would like that to be trustworthy if possible. But it doesn't stop at the geolocation. it may, in fact, be something along the lines of, my platform is free from malware because I have a resident anti-malware agent that, made a certain claim to that effect, or I don't even know what to imagine. But then once you know how to generate claims from the platform, then the special case of that would be a geofencing claim, like I'm in Germany. Right. And I would much rather solve it in that problem, like have an architecture for it. And then, that falls out as a special case. But, that's precisely speaking to your point here, David, in that if we come out of the gate with a solution, we in fact may decrease our effectiveness in the overall process. It would probably be okay under that lens to basically, just get agreement on the problem space first. Now, if I were to take the other side of this argument, the Whimsy working group might come back and say, okay, so fine, you told us we suck, but what are you proposing? Like, what are you actually, asking us to do? And again, we didn't really say much to that effect. So, Peter, you seem to be very active in Whimsy. Do you want to give us some guidance?
I think you need to approach this as a consensus building exercise. I would also point out, right, you are going to bring this to Whimsy, but it is really up to the working group to decide whether they care. And they may just decide that they don't, right? Either because it's out of charter or because there's just not interest in the room. There's no obligation on a working group to take on any work. And so it's really about whether a working group feels that something is in scope or not in scope. And that prioritization discussion, right, that is that's something that sort of develops over time. And so to David's point, there's nothing wrong with saying, I think this is how it might work. But if your opening gambit is you guys suck and here's the way forward, maybe you won't get that much interest, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say, what you put in the draft, will people, there's no guarantee that anybody will read the draft either. And typically, let's see, whenever getting working group adoption on a document typically it can take you a year of building consensus that this is in fact a problem that enough people care about, that there should be an official draft, right? Or a working group sponsored draft. And a lot of that starts with, is there a problem? And then once there is agreement on the problem, there is sort of a whole set of discussions about what the scope is and what the shape of the solution is before the draft gets adopted. And sometimes, I've seen drafts floating around for 2-3 years before they're ready for adoption as well.
Yeah.
So to your point, I would say, if the more you put in, the more there is for people to stumble on, but also at the same time, you have no guarantee that anybody's going to read the draft either.
Okay.
Yeah. And also to add to that, we're coming from an environment where nothing exists right now. There are other drafts that go through the IETF where there's already something in the wild and multiple companies are doing it and they're trying to come together to standardize it so they can interop together. Right now we have nothing, right? So you could design a solution, but you can't point to that solution in the real world or point to multiple companies that are using that architecture to do this, which is why I think the slow roll approach is better here, because it does what Peter says and allows people to be involved and be invested in the problem and make them potentially want to take this up. Because, like you said, they're under no obligation to take up every single internet draft that's submitted.
Yeah.
But also the fact that this is a multi-company coalition making this internet draft for submission adds weight to that, to saying, this is something that's important. We probably should take this on because you have all these big names behind this document that are saying that we really need this functionality to do this.
Yeah.
Or these architectural requirements, rather.
To that point, then why don't you guys go and add your contact information to the co-authors of the draft to give it more gravitas?
Or
Yeah, just
acknowledgements. Acknowledgements is the other option.
that's also not how it works, right? Because it's rough consensus, and it does turn out that who like it's not a straight up vote, right? I would also, one of the other things you should probably also consider is maybe get connected with the area directors, the security area directors. One of the things that strikes me about the whole confidential compute space is it may actually have to be its own working group or its own, like you may need your own charter for this, right? Because I don't see it necessarily, it's just something to consider. And one of the things you may want to consider is, test interest within the IETF and see if, something you might want to consider is a birds of a feather session, and getting that scheduled, maybe a side meeting, just to sort of test interest and see if there is sufficient interest for a confidential compute working group as opposed to, other working groups that may have different focus or other interests, right?
Right. Well, is there sort of an introduction I could use to someone to start talking to them? Like, again, I've been to a couple of IETF meetings, but I'm very much in the periphery of that.
I think, I think for you may want to reach out to like the area director, somebody like Deb Cooley on the security side or Paul Voters, and sort of outline what this idea of wanting to scope or trying to scope interest, determine if there's sufficient interest in this topic beyond existing working groups. And so typically when we created Whimsy, we kind of started the process that way. This results in a mailing list getting created, and from the mailing list, you then usually sort of get enough support to indicate that there's interest in a BOF session, and from the BOF session, you can have one or two of those, and then you can move on to whether you want to form a working group or not, right? So it's again sort of a process to go through.
Yeah.
Like there's no quick. The one thing I would say about any standards work, including IETF at least is much quicker than other things like ISO, for example, but
Yeah.
it takes, just takes a while to work through this process.
Right. Yeah. Well, I work for a bank, so I'm not afraid of slow process. So, all right, Peter, I know you need to go. So if you perhaps might shoot me a quick email with the names you just mentioned. I don't know if they're trivial spellings. That would probably be all
drop you
for
a note,
now.
but have a look and see. Like it might be interesting to just start that process in parallel. Just listening to these conversations, looking at the documents, right? This is quite specialized, maybe beyond what people are generally interested in just the workload context. Maybe RATS is different, right? But
Okay, well, I guess we'll see how it goes. And yes, Rats is and Hank is not on today, but he is the author of the Rats. Maybe I'll work through him to see what the Rats working group has to say. All right. Again, Peter, I'm going to let you go. I know you need to go, so be respectful of your time. Thank you so much. All right. So with this, I think I probably have enough to merge this pull request, and then we can. Is there a way to merge it? It's allowing me. Okay. Do you have your guys consent to just get that change in? Any objections? Click this button. Yes.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Hope there is not going to be any. All right. So that's in. So let's take a look over our remaining issues and see how much, because it sounds like you're going to be doing a lot of work offline. All right. So yes, we need the name for the internet draft. So we'll probably do this before we break today. We need binding to platform. And again, I really very much need that everything here has to have an owner. So if you want to volunteer for any of these issues, now is a really good time to speak up. So Matej, you said you were doing some work on provenance and lineage, right?
Yes, and as you can see, hopefully I'm associated to number 20.
Yeah.
Oh, lineage, I don't think we have a term for lineage, but I mean, we can, unless you guys have a specific need for lineage, because I was not planning to use lineage anymore and focus solely on provenance.
Yeah, that's what we decided earlier as well. So, okay, so I just want to make sure that you are correct. So this is assigned. Okay, anybody else here volunteering for either security considerations or acknowledgements or just any of these things that I know we don't need to worry about them?
You can assign the acknowledgement parts to me. I think we'll do the
Okay.
90-25. I just wanted to know who, okay, in the acknowledgement, whosoever is not the author, I would like in the group, mostly others like David, Sal, to be added. Apart from that, who would be like to be added on the list for acknowledgements?
Okay, so this is now assigned. But I mean, you can pretty much look over the meeting attendees over the last few weeks and fill it out that way.
Okay, makes
security
sense.
considerations.
Yeah, just a note, we don't need to be precise on security consideration, but we should give at least a section saying we had done a bit of due diligence or a bit of thought about security considerations. So it's
I can probably do this one.
okay.
I mean, security is what I do. So okay. Binding to platform. I think it's
this is something
Hank
and I own.
Okay,
yeah,
that's
I mean,
already ownership.
we do have, just so we know, we do have quite a wordy draft. I mean, it's like almost the size of the document here. We have to do something about it because it's coming a bit dry, I think, across. And I guess we went too deep into solutioning. We are still debating internally, but I think we will need the group's input sooner than later. So Hank is not today, so I don't want to decide for him, but I think we should be, expect something very like a vomit draft-ish form, coming your way in the coming days, and then let's see how we can proceed. Because for now, it's a bit too wordy, I think, for integrating as is.
Yeah. So the 7th is the deadline. The 4th through 6th in the US is the 4th of July weekend, and it's effectively safe to assume that nothing gets done. So let's try and get everything in by July 3rd, which would be Thursday of next week, right? So we meet again next Tuesday, and then it's going to be very rapid fire, close everything, get everything in data tracker and be done with it. I'm trying to figure out. I think this has now been removed. I don't think this is in the, I think I can close this issue. Well, I'll review it. I'm not going to do it right now. All right, so then let's have a quick discussion around the naming. It's a simple one. I just want to make sure we're on. Then we'll need a pull request to rename. So trustworthy whimsy extensions.
Yeah, so the thing is, I think, somebody who is at IETF tell me, but I think we are bound by the rules governing the naming that IETF poses. So those are the ones I pasted in the kind of context section. And question I would ask is whether we, because we're not coming from like an official IETF working group, whether we can call ourselves the CCC, or do we have to just use individual names of the lead author, in this case yours, Mark, I would assume, for like the naming prefix.
Yeah. What are there draft author subject version? And source. What's source?
If you click on the link, you'll see that the source, they enumerate like a couple of affiliated IATF organizations.
But we're not an affiliated IATF organization, are we?
We are not, but so I wonder how lax their definition is, because it's, I guess, leaving some wiggle room. I'm not sure how strict they are actually. Yeah, here if you scroll down, I think they define the source somewhere down.
So we need lowercase letters. So no capitals, digits and hyphens, and that's really it. And then version, I'm not exactly sure what version is supposed to be.
Version, I think it's assigned. I mean,
Version
it's a
is
00.
yeah, it's always 00. Start with 00 or 01.
But we don't need it in like they'll rename it for us, wouldn't they? Or do we put 00 on it?
I think that's a good point. I think they put a version on that. We always say is latest, and then they will
Okay.
assign a version number.
Okay, so I don't mind having my name on it. I guess ultimately it doesn't matter. It needs to be draft, so perhaps this one or this one, either CCC.
I think we
So
have
the reason
CCC
I
GitHub,
have this,
right? Yeah.
this green as my preference outside the CCC versus your name is I think it also follows this kind of group pattern. If you follow, it's like the third, second, and the fourth pattern, meaning it's then draft, then source/author, then group, meaning whimsy, and then the name. So I think the whimsy shall be the third component of the name.
So whimsy needs to take precedence.
I think so. I mean, if we want to conform to the middle two options in the syntax.
Okay, well then I am happy to go with this one. Any other?
My only point is this is a bit too long. So any objection to bullet 2 draft CCC trustworthy whimsy extensions?
Well, whimsy needs to go first, per what Mateusz just said. So we can put TWI instead of trustworthy workload identity.
Yeah.
So in that case, draft CCC, whimsy, TWI extensions.
Yeah.
Does that work for everyone?
It looks good to me, certainly.
Okay. And then we need a volunteer to actually get that pull request in and rename.
You can assign me. I mean, I did massage your pull request prior to that, so I'm happy to do the second rename.
Okay, Mateusz, thank you.
No worries.
All right, so that's now yours. Cool.
While you're doing that, you will retain the existing author list, right? And might want to add your name as well, or how are you going to do that?
I have another PR which is adding myself with the provenance part, so I think I'm going to retain the author list. But yeah, my name is coming up the roster someday, hopefully.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
All right. So a couple of things I want to do before we break. One is I just want to spend a couple of minutes and show you this because it was an email, but in case someone hasn't opened it. So this is something that Zvonko shared with me. If you remember, I asked Zvonko to look into, I understand data and use protection for mail, but I don't understand workload identity for mail because I don't understand what happens with like large models, etc. But there is a this proposal, and that links to this model transparency GitHub. So this link I'm opening right now links to the first one. But again, the links are all in the agenda for today. So this is sort of the marketing blurb and explains the threat model to machine learning model and how it can negatively affect predictions by machine learning powered apps, and then links. So used to Salsa, there are some mentions of in toto, but ultimately it is the model signing project, which is this. So, in your copious free time, start looking over these things because we're going to, pretty much right after the informational draft is in. We're going to be doing work on things like workload identity for machine learning models, workload identity across proxies, and all this other actual fun design stuff as we digest inputs from the IETF. Also, a note on time off. So after next week, I'm in Europe for 3 weeks. 1 week of that, 1 day I'll be at IETF, but the other 2 weeks are vacation. So I may not be in these meetings after the July 2nd meeting, or July 1st, whatever it was, Tuesday. So you're encouraged to continue in my absence, but I will re-engage fully in August after our first July meeting. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is in here, I want to scan over our document, soon to be renamed document. And just do one last eyeball so we can identify anything else that is significantly missing from this document that we could hope to author between now and next time we meet. Okay, so we have our introduction. We've beat it to death, so I'm not going to spend much time on that. Conventions, definitions. Again, there is a task to maybe tweak a few things and align it with the charter, so that's going to get done. The gap analysis speaks of 3 things: lack of this, lack of that, protection of credentials at runtime, token replay misuse, and lack of verifiable workload composition. So those are the gaps. And then the synergy. So that's where basically Whimsy is great, does all sorts of things, but it needs extensions. So the role of the hosting environment changes, remote attestation needs to be incorporated. And provenance, that's going to be a subject of this discussion that is already captured by an issue. And then platform binding, that's up under issue 27. So we'll have to put some words in there. And then how Whimsy integrates into or with confidential computing. Anything else that is missing or feels off?
I think I will have a serious look or a serious review once before the next week meeting, and then I can think of anything. I will update the group next week. But I think what the binding to the platform part is added, then we can have another look because there's substantial piece missing there yet. So
Right. Yeah, which, by the way, I look forward to the authors of the geofencing draft to see why they felt they need to step right into that and bypass this
exactly, because I
platform
was
attestation.
yeah, I mean, I did everybody looked at this geofencing work? I put it on the. I wanted to ask everybody on this. They also talk about the similar stuff as what I've shared this geofencing markdown. They are also proposing a similar kind of draft. We talked about security of workloads. Is there a commonality between what they are doing and what we are doing?
Well, there is, of course,
Yeah.
because we need also claims about platforms in the workload credential. So we identified that need. It's my only comment is they went to design before they went for architecture, and that is a mistake in my mind.
Sure. Yeah.
But they certainly identified the correct problem, and they're proposing some workable means of achieving it. I just want to make sure that the work translates into related areas, which again, this is what architecture is all about. So we don't do a one-off.
Sure.
Okay. So with that, I don't really think we're going to accomplish much else today. You know, if you have a task assigned to you, please work on it. As I mentioned, sooner rather than later, because after our next Tuesday's meeting, we will have almost no time to meet the deadline because of the way the calendar is. And I have nothing else to say, so I will probably wrap this up for today. Again, last comments from anyone?
I just wanted to ask you, Mark, that if you see their draft, they have some kind of industry use cases. Do we want to kind of add any use cases in our draft as connecting to the problem, or
Let me
or
think about it. I certainly believe that the use cases exist and are super important. My only question is to what extent have we already implicitly covered them by the text we already have?
yeah, that is also, I have also that thing. Yeah.
Right, because like again, I want content to be meaningful, and repetitive content doesn't work well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All right. Then with that, thank you all very much. Feel free to reach out on
Hey,
the mailing
sorry,
list.
Mark.
Yeah.
Can you put the OpenSSF link that forget what the exact name of the title was, or name of the project was, but
Yeah, I can put it in the chat for
chat.
everyone. In fact,
Okay.
you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to link to it from meeting minutes. So
Okay,
then
that's
there
cool.
is a record for everyone.
All right.
So model signing and
Model signing. That's
that.
great.
Yeah. So
I also put a link to the security area in the chat for you, Mark. That has the name of the two area directors that Peter mentioned earlier.
Oh, let me take a look real quick.
Yeah.
The geofencing informational draft. So
Also, did you know Peter's the chair of Whimsy when you invited him?
Peter, I work with Peter because he does Spiral, and I very much want Spiral to work with confidential computing. Yeah, I think he may also be the chair of Whimsy.
Yeah. So his statement of maybe you should go talk to the security area directors and get your own working group leads me to believe that he thinks this might not necessarily be the right venue for it. But I don't agree with him. Like, the security is not. I to some extent, unless it's a security technology, I don't like putting it in the security working group. I like putting it in the working groups that do the work, right? Which is Whimsy in this case. But it just means you might receive some sort of hesitation. Like, if you don't have the chair buy-in on a topic, it's going to be hard to maybe get other people to buy in on the topic.
So Peter is, fairly measured and conservative in his approach. I've spoken to him extensively offline, and I believe I managed to convince him that this is a real problem we're solving, and also managed to convince him that the sort of approach that I'm taking, which is break nothing or break as little as possible, be as compatible as possible, and like not be a bull in the china shop in this whimsy world, I think resonates with him. Now, clearly, there is non-zero impact from what we're saying, simply because the architectural, the key architectural assumption that Whimsy makes, that you can trust your platform, is appended by this, right? And coincidentally, the workload API in Spiffy simply is not compatible for that reason, because again, it's an architectural incompatibility. So his words to me were like, I'm well, I'm paraphrasing. He's basically saying I'm copacetic with what you're trying to accomplish, so long as you know it does not. So long as our customers don't scream and it doesn't create something that causes the rest of the effort to fail. So if we can figure out that middle ground, the introduction of our ideas into Whimsy that is broadly compatible with what they're doing, then I think we will come out ahead. In fact, so I've been given a fair hearing in the SPIFFy working group calls that happen Thursdays. By the way, if you can attend this week's call, that would be great. I cannot. I have a conflict, but I listen to what they have to say, and they have this thing called ambient mode that may in fact be how we can wedge our stuff in a compatible fashion. So I still think Peter is very much an ally in getting this done, but of course it needs to be done right. But yeah, I hear what you're saying in terms of if he's suggesting that maybe a separate effort, feels like a much longer path to success to do separate effort at this point. But I'll take the temperature at the ITF when I'm there.
Yeah, and starting up a separate working group is a pretty monumental effort and usually requires like a huge amount of work that needs to be done, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
or a completely new thing, right? And we don't want a completely new thing. We kind of want to
no, we don't.
use existing things. Otherwise, it's not going to be 2 to 3 years to get this done. It's going to be 5 to 7 to 10, which is not a reasonable time frame.
Yeah, no. So with that, I encourage everyone to look over the draft text and put on like a skeptical hat of someone who is like, who are these bozos, and why are they introducing their hardware-based stuff into our nice and neat whimsy or whatever they may be thinking. So look at that and see if it can be coached, if the text can be coached in such a way that would lessen such resistance. Zvonka.
Maybe just off topic, but since we have a couple of minutes, last week I talked to some people at the Confidential Compute Summit, and people were suggesting that we may also need to look into decentralized identities, like the combination with ledgers and stuff like that. So maybe this would be also a topic that we can put on our agenda after this is with the IETF is done.
I am happy to hear that. I've been actually thinking about decentralized identity for devices for a while, but also for humans, right? So if devices can have decentralized identities, I believe that it's a separate discussion that I'm also happy to have with you. But I hear you. Let's see if perhaps we can think about, if you can have with the help of confidential computing, perhaps you and also devices on which you do your work could have their own identities. That may have really interesting benefits. So yeah, let's talk about it somehow. Are you going to be at the ATF, by the way?
No. And also to add another comment on that is it not only like workload or other identities, it also ties down to supply chain security, right? If you have immutable ledger where you have an identity for each of the artifacts that you're building, so you can create a bigger picture of your supply chain, of your workload identities, of your hardware identities, etc. Right?
I see.
The full picture of all the components that are running in your TE tied to a immutable ledger and verifiable, like six store recore and then 6 store model difference certainty, all the other pieces that we have around. So yeah, just an FYI that we may need to look into.
I would say my suggestion would be, so we have our Google Drive. So create a little document in there and just throw some thoughts in there, and we'll come around and discuss it as soon as we're done with this particular effort.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right. Oh, by the way, Benedict, if you're in decentralized identity space, are they now fully tied to Bitcoin like they became, or is the Ethereum thing back up?
No, you know, if you do a DIP key like this, you basically can structure any cryptographic key into this format. So it's not tied to specific ledgers, or because there are so many different DID methods. We stick with DID key. You can also just generate the DID document based on the DID key. So it's not, you don't even need to contact any cloud endpoint to get the documents. It's just a way of expressing a public key.
I see. Okay. It was just when I looked at the decentralized identities. The Ethereum effort has petered out, and that was all on Bitcoin. And I do not know what has happened. Again, I'm a little stale in that area. I don't remember. I don't know what the current is.
Yeah, there are definitely like the methods that are tied to blockchains, but we use the one that isn't tied to any blockchain.
Gotcha. All right. Wonderful. Thank you all very much for attending. I'll see you again next Tuesday. Let's do most of the work offline this week. Have a good day.
Great, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Have a good one.